Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. That's no matter where you are, and welcome you all and to this joint webinar co-hosted by an International Renewable Energy Agency and the State Grid Corporation of China as part of long-standing cooperation between these two prominent energy organizations. My name is Yongzhen. I'm from IRENA. And next slide, please. Yeah, in today's webinar, you will gain insights on the working level cooperation between the two organizations and from a president of the State Grid Energy Research Institute and the director of Innovation and Technology Center of IRENA. But also that you will gain some insights as well as from from the high level of two organizations. This is the head of two heads of the organizations, and also this is the on the strategic level of how collaboration has been evolved and also moving forward. One of the key highlights in this webinar is launching joint report of Smart Electrification with Renewables. And this is a showcase of successful cooperation between the two organizations. A presentation will be made on that. Looking forward, an array of new ideas for future cooperation will be outlined in this webinar as well. And we'll also hear from experts, external experts on these ideas. And also we will very much hear from you as well as audience. This is how you think IRENA and the State Grid should cooperate in which areas as well. This is lastly, I will announce this webinar will be recorded and the simultaneous translation will be provided. You can find the global icon on the Zoom menu bar. And also this is we have, as I mentioned, we have distinguished experts. That's going to be the second session of this webinar. They're going to discuss not only reflection of our future cooperation ideas, as well as this report, smart electrification, and also among other important topics. They are going to exchange ideas. This is going to be facilitated and moderated by Jiang Liping, Vice President of the State Grid Energy Research Institute. And the closing remark will be provided by Dr. Lin, Director of IRENA's Innovation and Technology Center. Without further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Zhang Yunzhou, a President of State Grid Energy Research Institute, to give a talk on IRENA and the State Grid cooperation on working level. Mr. Zhang, floor is yours.
尊敬的各，你好，尊敬的各位来宾，女士们、先生们。
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, representatives, it is a great honor to participate in the Joint Research Report Conference of State Grid, Corporation of China, and IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency. We hope that the pandemic will end as soon as possible so that we may meet to exchange ideas and to deepen our cooperation. Since 2018, under the framework of the first phase cooperation, a memorandum was signed by SGCC and IRENA. The Energy Institute and IRENA have continued to carry out cooperation and exchanges in the field of research and consultation, mainly including joint research and exchanges, as well as mutual visits. In terms of joint research, in August of 2018, in accordance with the instructions of the senior leaders of both parties, the Energy Institute and the IRENA Innovation and Technology Center officially launched the research on smart electrification of renewable energy, promoting the transformation of energy services. Through meetings, e-conferences, emails, and other forms of communication, the two parties communicated and exchanged on the research content, main conclusions, organization, and time arrangements of the joint report. The summary version of the joint report results was released in 2019. In the past 3 years, despite the impact of the pandemic, the Energy Institute and IRENA have maintained close contact and continue to advance the revision and improvement of the joint report. Through the joint efforts of both parties, all research work has been completed and the joint report is now ready. In terms of exchanges and visits, from 2018 to 2019, the State Grid Energy Academy sent a researcher to the IRENA Innovation and Technology Center for exchange and visit. During this period, we mainly participated in the projects of the Innovation Group, the Energy Planning Group, and the Flexibility Analysis Group, and carried out the power grid, planning and flexibility research, power technology innovation, and typical applications and other related work were part of the joint report. Furthermore, other content includes microgrid quality system, global energy transition roadmap 2050, and others. At the beginning of 2019, the research team of the Energy Institute visited the United Arab Emirates to participate in the 9th IRENA General Assembly, made keynote speeches on clean energy development, electrification, and conducted relevant exchanges with our international counterparts. During the period, we saw the frequent visits of the director of IRENA Innovation and Technology, Mr. Dolphin, to discuss topics such as energy and power planning and power market development. Senior Project Director Miketa also visited and participated in the 2019 Energy Transformation and Development Forum of the Energy Institute and delivered a keynote speech. Here, I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to the dear colleagues at IRENA. In 2020, China made a solemn commitment to the world, striving to reach a peak in carbon dioxide emissions by 2030 and striving to achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. With the steady advancement of the national dual carbon strategy, the State Grid Energy Institute has successfully undertaken major research projects entrusted by China's NDRC, as well as the National Energy Administration, the State-Owned Assets Supervision Administration Commission, and other government authorities. We've carried out important work and analysis in terms of carbon neutrality, power demand side management, and providing decision support for the government, industry, and enterprises, demonstrating the research value of think tanks. Looking forward, there are still many topics that need to be discussed and researched together in the fields of green and low carbon transformation of energy, integrated development of new energy, construction of new power system, and power supply security. We believe under the cooperation of the State Grid Energy Institute and IRENA, the second phase of the strategic cooperation will be further deepened, and efforts will be made to contribute wisdom and strength to the low carbon energy transformation and development of China as well as the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zhang, for a very detailed and layout of how have been cooperation be proceeded in the past years, and also this is very much looking forward this collaboration, future collaboration. Now I would like to invite Dr. Dolph Gilling, Director of IRENA's Innovation and Technology Center, and give a presentation on the technical focus between and the two organizations. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Young. So Yang Young-ju, dear State Grid colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, this is a very happy occasion to meet, albeit we can only meet virtually this time. We've had a very fruitful cooperation over the last couple of years. Mr. Zhang has summarized that, so I will not repeat that. I just want to say thank you for that cooperation. That has been very important, not only for IRENA, but also for all our members to learn from the experience in China. And we're very much looking forward to the second phase of this cooperation. If we move to the next slide, what I want to do is, before we move into the findings from this new joint report, I want to give you a little bit the big picture, how that fits in. So we see a key role for electricity in this energy transition. And that is in two ways. On one hand, that the electricity supply will change, and the future electricity supply will be dominated by renewables. So here is our 1.5 degree scenario, where we have a 90% renewable share in electricity by 2050. And at the same time, the share of electricity in total energy demand will increase significantly. So in this scenario, we have 51% direct electricity use. On top of that, there's another 8 percentage points electricity being used for green hydrogen production. So the total contribution of renewable electricity and electrification of end users in the global decarbonization is around 45%. So it's really a critical part of the global energy transition. If we move to the next slide. So we've been working on this topic for some time. So we'll have this new report, joint report, presented in a moment. We need flexibility. We need sector coupling solutions, and we need innovations to make this to make this future power system work, to generate the flexibility that we need. And that is an area where we have been focusing on a lot in recent years. Next one, please. So on the left, you see where was flexibility, where did flexibility come from so far? It was mainly fossil fuel plants that are dispatchable. So flexibility on the supply side. But going forward, that will change, because the role of these fossil fuel plants will decline. There will be far less such plants. So we need to find that flexibility also elsewhere. We need to find flexibility in the grids, in the market designs. We also need to find flexibility on the demand side. So and the way that power system of the future will operate will be very different than today's power system. Next one, please. So we see at the same time these decentralized renewable solutions, renewable supply options coming into play. Also, we see that electrification will increase significantly. And at the same time, digitalization is playing a much more important role. And digitalization allows then to design these systems in a smart way. So information will play a much more important role in operating that system of the future. We need innovations, and we see 4 categories of innovations that we need. We need, of course, technologies, but we also need changes in the way the system is operated. We need changes in the market design, for example, prices that reflect scarcity. And we need new business models that allow, for example, the aggregation of energy services from distributed PV systems or distributed batteries. So only by combining innovations in these 4 areas, we can provide the future flexibility that will be needed. The next one, please. So we looked at that in great detail. We have identified across these 4 dimensions about 30 types of innovations. And on that basis, we have developed an innovation toolbox. At the same time, we are currently assisting our members in assessing the flexibility they have in their system and in developing strategies how to enhance their flexibility further through tools such as our Flex tool modeling system. So information from best practices from across the world, also from China and from State Grid, is very critical in this context. And we hope that some of this information we gather from other parts of the world can also inform the Chinese decision making. Next slide, please. So we are taking this work now forward. We are working on new analysis on electrification of end-use sectors. Also there, we're working closely with the State Grid experts on smart grid approaches for electrification in transport industries and buildings. And as said, we look forward also to expand the cooperation with State Grid further in this area, for example, also in the role that green hydrogen production can play in creating more flexibility. So that concludes my opening remarks, and I look forward to the presentation of the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dolph, and for very concise and also nicely actually put the technical focus and the cooperation with State Grid in contextualize it in the global energy transition framework. I think this is a very important point, and as you highlighted, and thank you very much with that. And also, this is as Dolph highlighted, is a very important to move on to flexibility and smart and the electrification as a part of that to avoid, and we are going to end up in a situation we solve one problem by creating another one. And so with that, I would like to invite Asami to give a presentation on this is a joint report and smart electrification with renewables. And Asami, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I hope you hear me well.
Yes,
good.
Fine, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, colleagues in China. Good morning, colleagues in Europe. I'm going to present the report on behalf of IRENA team and SGCC team. I had a pleasure of working on this project for last 3 years together with the SGCC team. And I had the pleasure also visiting China, and we also had a great cooperation with one of the colleagues from SGCC team actually coming and working with us in our premises in Bonn. So we created a great cooperation and also great friendship throughout these 3 years. And so IRENA and State Grid Corporation have several areas of strategic cooperation. And in this project, we work together to develop strategies towards electrification. And when we started this project, we started with the concept of re-electrification. So that means the electrification with renewable energy. But we extended this concept to smart electrification with renewable energy. And this is to highlight the importance of doing electrification smartly. Next slide, please. So what is the smart electrification with renewables? So the smart electrification with renewable is a strategy that maximizes the utilization of renewable power in the context of clean energy transition. And that can be achieved by maximizing the synergies among these three trends. So this figure was already shown and explained by Dolph, and we see that electrification as an integral part of the key trends for the energy sector. And we see more and more electricity in all forms of energy devices, and also replacing fossil fuels in the end use sector by all these electric devices. And in the longer term, we need to shift from the concept of integrating renewable energy in the existing system to designing the new ways of using renewables. And here the key challenges are that the political will is needed. And also market transformation is needed, but it takes time. And also new infrastructure need to be built. And all these things takes time. Next slide, please. Our study started with identifying the importance of electrification with renewables in our respective scenarios and our outlooks. So from the IRENA side, we assessed our global scenario that is compatible with 1.5-degree climate target. And from the state grid side, the electrification scenario was assessed. That was only for China. And in terms of the use of electricity in the final demand, currently the world stands at about 23%, and China is also about the same as a global average. So for 2050, the state grid scenario shows the penetration of electricity in the end-use sector is a bit over 50%. And this electricity, 68% of electricity will be supplied by renewable energy. So that was according to the state grid scenario. And in the IRENA's global scenario, the share of electricity in the end-use sector was also about over 50%. And the renewable energy accounts quite significant portion of it, 90% of the power generation. So that is significant increase from current global penetration level of renewable energy of 25%. And we benchmarked these numbers against other 1.5-degree compatible scenarios or below 2-degree scenarios. And from that, we see that there is a broad consensus on the increased level of electrification and high share of renewable energy. I would also like to just note that in the state grid scenarios, nuclear is also playing an important role, which is about 11%. So clean energy constitute 80% of the electricity supply in China in this scenario. Next slide, please. So now let me discuss the technology options available for the electrification technologies. So this figure gives illustrative examples of how the current energy needs for different sectors could be potentially met with different electrification technologies. So this green portion of this pie chart is approximately the share of the direct use of renewable energy in each sector. And the left box is the building, the central box is the transport, and the right box is industry. So for example, in the building sector, the green portion of the share mainly corresponds to the biomass used. And similarly, the blue portion is approximately the share of electricity used in each sector, again corresponding roughly to the current global statistics. And gray areas in the pie chart corresponds to the demand that are currently met by fossil fuels. For the current fossil fuel use, we showed an illustrative example of how different electrification technology could be used. It's not that we are suggesting that these are the particular technologies, but these are illustrative examples. So, for example, in the building sector, a bit more than 40% of its global demand is currently met by fossil fuels. As a possible alternative, cooking demand can be met by electric stoves, and low temperature demand, such as space and water heating demand, can be met by heat pumps and also hydrogen-based gases. For transport sector, currently very small portion of demand is met by electricity, and they are largely electricity used for the train services. So the direct use of renewables in transport correspond to biofuels. And as three key technology options for the transportation sector, we identified battery electric vehicles, fuel cell vehicles, and synthetic gas and oil. They could be possibly used for different demand segments. For example, EV is likely to be used in the short to medium distance range road transport. And the fuel cell vehicle using hydrogen as fuel might be more suited for long distance or heavy duty vehicles. And hydrogen-based synthesis fuels may be good options for marine and aviation sectors. For industry, little more than a quarter of the demand is currently met by electricity, while biofuels are also used prominently. Depending on the temperature range of the industry energy needs, different electrification technology options are available. So electric furnaces and boiler can provide high to medium temperature range, while the heat pumps can provide mid to low temperature range. And hydrogen can also provide a viable option, particularly for so-called hard to decarbonize applications. So for industry non-energy use, which means mainly feedstock in the chemical sector, hydrogen derivatives such as ammonia and ethylene may be viable options. Next slide, please. So we looked at different options, but it is important to note that we cannot actually assess the electrification pathways for different demand sectors in isolation. It is not just about choosing the different devices and technologies for different end-use applications, because the choices in the end-use technology will have important impact on the infrastructure requirement. So here we present the schematic illustration of the infrastructure requirement for the different electrification technologies. So it starts with the left side green boxes that represent the generation and production stage. Red boxes in the middle represent the transmission and distribution stage. And the orange boxes represent the storage and end-use stages. On the generation and production, the key options are either to use electricity directly or indirectly as hydrogen that is produced from renewable electricity or other e-fuels produced with hydrogen. Another aspect is whether to produce them near the renewable generation sites and transport the product to the site of the use or produce them near the end use. This choice would require the different types of infrastructure development. On the transmission and distribution side, key question is whether existing infrastructure can be used or retrofitting is needed or completely new infrastructure need to be developed. And this is a very complex system with a lot of trade-off decisions to be made. So to look at this in a holistic way, we also performed a literature review of energy system modeling analysis to gain insights and see what we can learn from them. Next slide, please. So the literature review was quite challenging because there was actually quite limited literature that looks at all the components that I presented in the previous slide in a holistic way. Some literature covers partially some part of it and other covers the other part. But still we were able to formulate general principles for the least cost system-wide electrification. So we were able to draw 3 general principles. The first one, the energy efficiency first. It is much more cost effective than expanding the infrastructure. And the second, the direct electrification with renewable is the most cost effective when the option exists. The third one, the indirect electrification using hydrogen and other e-fuels are versatile fuels and has advantage in energy dense end-use application, and also it provides great system-wide flexibility. And where these principles come from? These principles come from the general agreement in the literatures that building out the generation capacity is the biggest cost component in the whole system mapping. Next slide, please. So building out the generation and transmission capacity need to be optimized. If we implement all these technology options without any strategy, it may cause significant stress to the electrical system, and we may end up overbuilding the capacity. In particular, uncoordinated electrification may result in suboptimally high peak electricity, which increase the network cost unproportionally high. The key features of smart electrification is that it reduces the peak demand, and then therefore the grid investment cost to accommodate the peak demand would be also reduced. So these are our strategies. So we came up with 3 strategies. The first one, better adjusting demand to renewable energy supply. And I would like to underline the significance of this concept, because this may imply fundamental shift in planning the system. Traditionally, the supply needs to be met to demand that is valuable. Now, with smart electrification strategy, the demand can be made to better meet the supply that is variable, particularly the variability of solar and wind need to be accommodated. And this is very important as we expect in the future with very high share of renewable energy, the share of variable renewable energy is also expected to be significant. And this adjustment is necessarily not only to curb the peak demand, but also to maximize the utilization of variable renewable energy. And this can be carried out by a number of measures. First, smart charging of EV. This requires not only the charging infrastructure that better regulate the charging patterns, but also policy, regulation, and business models that incentivize better management of the charging patterns, such as time of use tariff. Smart heating and cooling also requires similar infrastructure that allows better building management, use of waste heat, or in the case of industrial process, better process management. And thermal storage also allow to optimize the usage of the heating and cooling services. In either smart charging and smart heating and cooling, digital technology is also the key enabler. For heating and cooling, strong seasonality in the demand pattern exists. And again, without smart management, simply electrifying this heating demand would cause stress to the electricity network with high peak demand. Together with the thermal storage, hydrogen can be stored when demand is low and used when the demand is high. And such storage would allow to defer investment in electrical network. So the hydrogen storage is particularly valuable in places in line with congestion, the places with the line congestion, and then high concentration of VRE. Then we can rather use the gas infrastructure instead of electricity network infrastructure. So here, holistic planning is needed. The second strategy is to expand the grid services to accommodate high share of variable renewable energy. So this type of service includes, for example, the load following, flexibility regulation, or backstart capability, and also provision of operational reserves in order to maximize the utilization of variable renewable energy. And we have now many key technologies available to provide these services, and that helps to accelerate the adoption of renewable energy generation. For example, plug-in battery service can be utilized to provide grid services, not just peak shaving and balancing, but also helping to regulate both voltage and frequency on the grid. An aggregator service, another area where decentralized power generation and demand service potentially can be aggregated to smoothen out the supply of electricity collectively. And finally, the opportunity for electrification needs to be expanded to indirect electrification using hydrogen and its derivatives. So expansion of low-cost renewable sources around the world is providing really the unique opportunity, and particularly in the industry sector, where highly energy intensive industry may be hard to decarbonize through direct electrification and may rely on hydrogen or e-fuels as a result. Industrial relocation of industrial operations to areas with high quality, low-cost renewable sources could also take advantage of optimal hydrogen production conditions. Next slide, please. So this is my final slide and concluding slide. We identified the key priorities for policymakers for implementing the smart electrification strategies. The first one, it is important to develop a long-term vision of the role of electricity in the country's energy system, taking into account taking into full account of the infrastructure implications. And this aspect of planning is very critical because electrification tomorrow requires investment in infrastructure today. And we need to have investment both in electrical system and digital technology. The second, we need a regulation that allows to have a good market design. The electrification strategy requires creation of proactive market that deliver flexibility and economic incentives. And it is important to remove barriers for innovative technologies or the ownership models and encourage wider stakeholder participation. And linking with the wider stakeholder participation, we also need to reflect the needs and the wishes of the consumers and communities, because they will be increasingly important participants of the electrification strategies, together with the trend of the power system becoming more and more decentralized, and they become a part of the prosumers. Now, once we understand the implication of the infrastructure, then we also need to promote solutions in different sectors to take advantage of synergies and also introduce standards and codes, and also promote upscaling of technology by pushing R&D. The next slide, please. So I try to summarize the key points from the report in this relatively short time. But in the report, there we provided a lot of good collection of examples of technology applications, policy responses, and of course, I could not cover everything. And the report was published last week on our website. So if you have not had a chance to download it, I hope many of you can download it now. And yeah, look forward to further collaboration with the State Grid Corporation and also wider community working together to achieve the goal of clean energy transition. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Asami, for the very insightful deep dive on this topic, and within very short period of time. This is a very uneasy task, but I think it very well, highlights the importance of smart electrification, because very often we heard electrification, but actually this is only part of the story. And but this is there's a wide range of options there on the table. That is energy planners and also energy authorities, all countries at the central as well as the local level. That's so they can choose to and design the power grid and also energy system of the future, and to make it more flexible and also reliably and operated, which is a very important topic. And given the more and more renewables getting into the grid, and those tools that Asami presented here, and also this is very well studied this in the report, and how actually it can be integrated into the planning process and into the decision-making process. I think this is very important, and not only for us, for our member states, for all the audience actually who participated in today's webinar. So I would very much encourage you guys to go to our website and download the report and study well, and also throw us the questions or your feedbacks on this report, and to Asami and her team. And thank you for that in advance for your time, if you can provide some of your input as well. And that is with that said, one of the things we are going to move forward is that's how this is a previously established study, especially this is a very important joint product, how actually what it mean to China. This is especially, and China is right now advancing the energy transition and towards a low carbon or energy system, and eventually trying to achieve and carbon neutrality by 2060. So the big question ahead of us, and there's many thinking around that, and also state grid play a very important role in this. And there are also some topics we would like to focus on, and on the next phase of cooperation. So I would like to invite Mr. Li Jian, Chief Engineer of State Grid Energy Research Institute, to present some preliminary thoughts and also new initiatives and for the next cooperation. That is very much based on what's happening in China, what's the most important, and but also this is everything and presented here is very much relevant to the rest of the world, because those are the key elements that we are scratching our head trying to find solutions, and this is very important for the global energy transition and for the next decades to come. And the floor is yours, Mr. Li. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Distinguished representatives, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. We heard earlier from Asami with regard to the Smart Electrification report. It was an excellent presentation, if I may add. During the joint research process of the previous phase, the two sides accumulated experience and research discussion, exchanged visits, and published the report, which laid a good foundation for the cooperation moving forward. Based on the second phase cooperation framework and communication, I would like to propose the research topics that should be focused in the next phase. Through the research and development that has already taken place, countries have reached consensus with regard to the importance of renewable energy development, as well as the importance of electrification, and that we should speed up its development. We have now reached a general consensus on these topics. For the next phase, we have the working framework is on the electrification and smart electrification. Clean energy transformation is clearly a trend in the world. Countries all over the world are expanding the deployment of renewable energy and increasing the proportion of renewable energy use in order to deal with the issues of climate change and energy supply. Some of the issues that we are facing are similar, but also very different. For developed countries, they get their energy a mix from proportion from other different energy sources. So as a whole, the power system of developed countries are quite mature, and they have a steady supply of electricity. For example, they can use high quality energy such as natural gas. There are more flexibility for the developed countries. Energy costs are able to be shouldered by the developed countries. They have more resources. But for developing countries, on the other hand, the challenge is more grave. In terms of the economic development and society, the development of society, developing countries, not only in transportation, in industry, or in construction, there is more need for electrification and more need for energy supply. The current system, electricity system or power system in the developing countries stands to be improved. For example, the high cost natural energy is not as available for developing countries as it is for developed countries. So also in terms of investing in energy mix, the developed countries face more challenges. In terms of cost has always been a big barrier for the energy transformation for developing countries. The transformation to clean energy will certainly bring about more burden. So it is difficult for developing countries to create a positive cycle and to ensure a stable and reliable supply of electricity. This is a major subject that needs to be further explored. We've also seen that be it developed countries or developing countries, they both face the challenge of creating or providing safe and reliable renewable energy for their citizens. Because of this, for the next phase, we are focusing on the key issues of power development with high share of renewable energy. Now, let's take a look at the few subtopics under the main topic of development of high share renewable energy. First of all, how do we balance safety and economy during the transition phase? And as we confirm the future objectives, how can we ensure safety and economy? And what profound changes will take place in regulation and balancing the mode of power system? This is what I mentioned earlier about guaranteeing secure and safe energy. Thirdly, how do we balance demand response and also deal with the consumer behavior changes? When we establish a power development with high share of renewable energy, we also need to understand what the consumer reception is. Furthermore, key technological innovation and application trends, how do they affect low carbon transition? Technical innovation plays a very important role. Then lastly, typical application scenarios of high proportion renewable energy power system, how do they play out? These are all very important subtopics under the main topic of power development with high share of renewable energy. Now, how do we balance safety and economy during the transition phase? Transition and development strategies of fossil energy power generation, what is the cost that each and every country can afford? How can we balance this? Providing safe energy as well as making sure that it is the cost is affordable. There are many other ideas that can be explored, for example, strategies of fossil energy power generation, and as well as the development roadmap of renewable energy. Furthermore, what profound changes will take place in regulation and the balance mode of power system? So we focus on regulation of high share renewable energy power systems such as solar, photovoltaic power, and what about the storage, multiple energy storage? Can that be one solution so that we can satisfy the energy demand in different seasons and different situations, different weather situations? In the future, integration and interaction between power grid and other energy networks like heating network and natural gas pipeline network needs to be further explored. Thirdly, in terms of demand response and consumer behavior, how are they changing? What are the trends? We need to focus on measures and strategies of demand response and consumer behavior change, including the demand side acting mode, power system flexibility, the new demands, and what are the influences of new technology, such as big data, etc. And then if we look at key technological innovation and application of trends affecting the low carbon transition, we need to identify key technologies that will influence low carbon transition and focus on indicators and predict the key technologies application scales in different stages. And now we may look at typical application scenarios of high proportion of renewable energy power system. So we've proposed the urban situation as well as the rural situation. What are the functional characteristics and the construction strategies of these areas? Through our exchange, based on the surveys as well as the research results, we have now formed an opinion on the topics based on this platform of working together with IRENA. We are now further engaged in this project. This project should last about 2 years, and it will end in December of 2023. We are very happy to have invited various experts from both China and overseas, and we look forward to hearing your opinion and your ideas on how we may proceed with this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and Mr. Liu, and for the very detailed and systematic and outline of the next step, how we're going to move forward and which topic would be more important. All of this, what you just highlight, is critical questions, and we need to address probably in the next year to come. So we're going to have a discussion about the topic and also about the presentation in the past. This is after very high level and the dialogue and between and the IRENA's Director General, Mr. Francisco La Camara, and State Grid Executive Chairman, Mr. Xin Baoan. This session is going to be moderated by Elizabeth Press as the Director of Program and Planning Support and at IRENA. Without further ado, I would like to hand it over to Elizabeth and probably to kick off this session. And we should good discussion. Elizabeth, floor is yours.
Thank you, Young, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Very great to be here today. Fascinating discussions, really interesting points raised by colleagues both from IRENA and from China. And I'm very pleased to be moderating this upcoming discussion with two high-level participants, distinguished guests. Let me just briefly introduce them. As Young mentioned, we have the pleasure of having Chairman Xin Baoan, the Executive Chairman of State Grid Corporation of China and the President of China Electricity Council. Mr. Xin has a Master of Engineering in Electrical Engineering from North China Electric Power University, and he's deeply engaged in power sector for over 40 years. And so we're really looking forward to hearing his experience now being the executive chairman of the State Grid, but also from his previous experiences as the president, the executive vice president of the company, of different companies successfully over the years. So we also have our Director General, Mr. Francesco La Camara. He has more than 30 years of experience in fields of climate sustainability and international cooperation. He was formerly Director General of Sustainable Development, Environmental Damage, European Union and International Affairs at the Italian Ministry of Environment, Land and Sea. And he has extensive experience in developing cooperation and partnerships in this field across the world. Since he came to IRENA, he has made a strategic shift of the agency to focus more towards the implementation on the ground. How can we make a difference? How can we use extensive knowledge that IRENA possesses to really instigate a change in real life? So I'm really happy to have both of you here, and let me start first with the Chairman Jin. State Grid Corporation of China is the world's largest grid operator. What are your key strategies to accelerate the power system transition in China in the coming years? And what is exactly the role that the State Grid will play in this ambitious strategy? Over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Moderator, dear Director General, La Camera, and colleagues from IRENA. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to have this honor to meet you online and talk about energy transition. In September 2020, President Xi Jinping made China's carbon peak and carbon neutral commitment to the world, pressing the fast forward button for China's energy transition. As the world's largest public utility company, State Grid Corporation has positioned itself as the promoter, forerunner, and leader of the clean and low carbon transformation of energy. From 2021 to 2025, we plan to invest more than $350 billion to accelerate the upgrade of the power grid to the energy internet and promote the construction of a new power system. The first pillar is to strengthen the interconnection of the power grids. China's new energy development is very fast, and in the next 10 years, the installed capacity will increase by 100 gigawatts, and we have decided to establish a better power grid and continue to improve on the currently power grid and make sure that we can focus on new energy. Secondly, we will continue to improve the regulation capability of the power system in order to protect the power grid. New energy power generation is very critical, but it also poses a lot of challenges. So it is very important to be flexible. And currently, we are developing pumped storage power plants, and presently there are many pumped storage power plants under construction. There are 63, and its installed capacity is over 75 gigawatts. And it is expected by 2030, there will be more than reach 70 million kilowatts or 70 gigawatts. We also actively support the development of new types of energy storage, such as chemical energy storage. And we want to continue to improve the level of digitization. And this is our third pillar. We hope that buildings or industrial parks, these would be very important and provide better energy efficiency. There will be demonstration projects to guide these users so that they have better energy efficiency. Fourth is to improve the digitization of the power grid. We have a digitization project in place. We also have created the largest cloud platform, and this is a one-stop service. And currently, solar and wind energy have been incorporated onto this smart platform. And there are 2.67 million stations, and its installed capacity is 540 gigawatts. We have also created the largest smart EV platform in order to provide power charging. And there are now more than 1.5 million charging stations built. Fourthly, we want to continue to promote key and core technology research so as to make sure that we will be able to meet the demands. There will be a higher penetration rate of new energy. Of course, this means that with more new energies integrated in our grid, the technology and operation mechanism of power systems will be very different from what they are today, which brings huge challenges. That is why we have a lot of new projects, so as to make sure that we can grasp the latest technology of, for example, power transmission. These are very important to become pillars of our energy transition. So these are some of our deployments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairman Shin. It's actually fascinating to listen to your numbers. It's mind-boggling, you know, what task you have and the ambition that you display. Let me turn to our Director General. Director General, IRENA has a global membership, so you have a very good overview of what's happening around the world. Can you pinpoint for us and narrow down, you know, what does it mean, you know, China's strategies and the region? How does that fit into a global strategy? What are the lessons and the experiences we can draw from that space?
Elizabeth, for your question, and it's really a pleasure to be together. Unfortunately, only virtually with my Chinese friends, with Chair Maxine and all the other that are with us in this event. China is the largest energy consumer in the world, and it plays a pivotal role in the global energy transition. China is, by fact, is a global leader in renewables. It accounts for 1/3 of globally installed renewable capacity. And we have just heard about the ambition program and the realities in China from my friend, Mr. Xin. With this massive capacity, China can use renewables both for power generation and for end-use sectors, like transport and building, to meet its climate aspiration. So this makes clear that China could be really an example, not only for the region, but for all the world, trying to be the first or among the first, and accelerating the use of renewable electricity, including in the end-use sector. That is very critical. We are discovering a moment, step by step, how important could be renewable electricity also in the end-use sector. China now has the opportunity to become a global leader in what is needed going forward. It can show how to unlock existing flexibility in the power system by restructuring power markets and operation, and addressing any regulatory barrier to flexibility. Is what this project is about at the end. It can also lead in developing the new market for renewable electricity in green hydrogen, showing how this new resource can be a source of great system flexibility. So in those all these elements, I'm convinced that China can show the world how this could be done and could be done in an effectively way. And this cooperation is aiming to build the case and showcase the case to the benefits of all the others in the region and out of the region. Back to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Director General, and thank you for pointing out the importance of sharing experiences in international cooperation, because we're all on a steep learning curve and learning by doing. So it's very important that that champions are able to show at least part of the way. So let me go back to Chairman Shin. Excuse me. You know, we have this MOU in place, and which has been very interesting for us to work together. But can you reflect on what has been accomplished under this MOU, and how do you see our future cooperation evolving?
Thank you very much, Director General La Camera. I'm very inspired. IRENA is very, very influential, especially in the area of energy. And since its founding, IRENA has played a very critical role in promoting renewable energy. In recent years, the State Grid Corporation has continued to maintain a very good relationship with IRENA. In 2017, we signed our MOU, and last April, we continued to extend this MOU, and both parties have continued to cooperate in a lot of very substantive projects. We have also sent experts to IRENA to start research programs. And we just heard from the presentations that we talked about, that we have a joint report on smart electrification and energy transition. And I think these are very important results and achievements throughout our cooperation. In addition, we have also organized the Energy Transition Forum, and in the organization of such a forum, we have received great support from all members. Last year, we were also organizing this forum, and Mr. La Camera came to our forum and gave an opening speech, and we are really very grateful for his presence. Currently, China, of course, is working very hard to reach our carbon neutrality goals. And there are many different kinds of technologies and solutions that we can adopt. We hope that we can continue to deepen our collaboration with IRENA and learn from our peers. We can focus on the major issues of energy transition, including, for example, smart electrification or green low carbon-based solutions. We can also learn from our peers and also the lessons accumulated by other countries. We can work together hand in hand so that we can meet the challenges, and at the same time, I believe our collaboration will reach new heights. In the second half of this year, we will also organize a 2022 International Energy Transition Forum. And I would like to take this opportunity to invite IRENA to continue to cooperate with the State Grid Corporation of China so that we can organize this forum and make sure that the global power sector can take part and create a great platform. I would like to take this opportunity to invite the Director General to come to our forum and grace our event. And of course, details would be worked out in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the specificity of your intervention, and we are very excited to hear about your forthcoming forum on the energy transition, and I'm sure the Director General will reflect in more detail on that. But let me, there is a flurry of questions in the chat, and it's very unfortunate that we don't have the time to address them. But it's very interesting to see what our audience are asking and picking up from conversations, asking questions about electric mobility, around green hydrogen, and all these emerging interesting issues that we all are tackling. So Director General, let me go back to you. In our MOU with the State Green Corporation of China, we agreed to advance electrification with renewables and facilitate power grid development with specific focus on smart grids and sector coupling. So what are the main lessons that you have observed from our joint work, and how these lessons can be applied or shared with other countries, specifically the developing countries? Over to you, Director General.
Thank you. Very good question. And naturally, as I say, China's State Grid Corporation has been and is and will be a great partner and friend of IRENA. We are very proud of this cooperation. For me, in some ways, it's also been special because you mentioned, Elizabeth, about my experience in cooperation. One of the most fruitful one was working with the Chinese government when I was in my previous position, the Ministry for the Environment in Italy. So I have reached my list of friends in China with the people of the China State Grid Corporation. So it gives me a really pleasure and honor to be part of this conversation. Our work provides many lessons for countries wishing to accelerate the use of renewable electricity. The main message is that future grids will be very different from the current one. In a world with rapid growth of renewable electricity generation and electrification of end uses. But smart electrification solutions exist to avoid potential problems caused by rapid and uncoordinated electrification. To make these transitions happen, our work shows that countries must start planning electrification pathways as soon as possible. This is what I said yesterday also in another event where I was invited to participate in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Electrification tomorrow requires investment in infrastructure today. We have to be very clear on this. If we want to accelerate the energy transition, infrastructure has to be planned and implemented today. Countries must develop roadmaps for smart electrification infrastructure, including transmission and distribution grids, charging infrastructure, and networks for hydrogen transport and district heating, cooling expansion. So these are all part of the work having together the State Grid Corporation and IRENA. And dear Xin, we are absolutely excited and happy to collaborate with you to organize this international forum. I accept your invitation with great pleasure. It will be really a great momentum, naturally, to be part of this event and contribute to it, but also to meet many Chinese friends that because of the pandemic and this very strange time we are living, I had not the chance to meet personally. So you can count 100% on our collaboration. It is a very effective one, and naturally will be an honor to be back in China in the occasion of this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you both for the generosity of this input and richness of discussion. And Chairman Xin, did you want to make a remark?
I would like to take this opportunity to thank Director General Lacamera to accept my invitation.
Thank you very much, and we look forward. I told you there was many questions coming in the chat, and hopefully we can take some of that in your conversation later in the year when you meet in person for the international forum. And thank you both for very deep and insightful comments. We look forward to close continued cooperation and leading by example as we need to move from commitments to action. Thank you so very much. Young, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Xin. Thank you very much, Mr. Cameron, and thank you, Ms. Press. That's for the wonderful, dialogue, and you can see this is a setting strategic direction, where the cooperation between IRENA and the State Grid and is going to head for. And there's this very key topics. This is right now hindering the energy transition. That is something that we definitely need to focus on. And there's also way of solutions, and at least innovative solutions. And the IRENA can leverage over expertise, and as well the member states that can address that. That is a great platform, and that's a great cooperation. And very happy to have both actually from State Grid and from IRENA both ahead, and to have this dialogue. Thank you once again. Now we move to the next session, which is more deep dive and trying to learn from distinguished external experts and to see how they view over cooperation, how they, in terms of already done this in the report or the presented the topic, as well as what's the future direction specific topic and the areas and the technical orientations we need to focus on. And I would like, it's going to be moderated by Ms. Jiang Liping, and Vice President of State Grid Energy Research Institute. And Ms. Jiang, hand it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your introduction. Today, there's a wide array of topics to discuss. Of course, now the research report has been published, and Mr. Xing and Director General Camara have exchanged ideas, and our colleague, Mr. Li, has also presented some thoughts on the second phase of the research. Now, today we've invited 4 experts to participate in the roundtable discussion. During this discussion, we hope that we can hear from the experts your feedback, your evaluation of the report. What areas should we further investigate? Furthermore, we would like to hear about what topics you think should be included in the next phase of the report. Let's keep this roundtable discussion very open. Mr. Li, in his presentation, made a summary of what had been discussed in phase 1. And I noticed in Dolph's presentation, he also talked about his ideas and suggestions for what should be tackled in the next phase. So based on what has already been accomplished, what should we do to further facilitate the smart electrification using renewables? And Mr. Xing and Director General Camara also put forth their ideas. So in view of all these different ideas and thoughts, I would like to encourage the participants in the roundtable discussion to speak freely. As this is a virtual meeting, so I would like to invite each expert to speak. Now we have invited Eurelectric Secretary General Christian Ruby and Chinese Sustainable Energy Center expert Kara Sandholt, and Director of NCSC, Mr. Li Jufeng, as well as the professor from Tsinghua University, Kang Chongqing. So these 4 experts are preeminent in their fields and are experts at energy transformation. So we're very happy to have them here. So let me follow the list. And if I may invite Secretary General Christian Ruby from Electric, please take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the invitation to this very interesting conference. And let me start by saying that the European electricity industry is strongly supportive and welcomes the Chinese endeavors to pursue climate neutrality around or slightly after mid-century. In our sector, which comprises some 3,500 companies across Europe, from the generators to the small distribution companies, we have made a common pledge to say we will pursue carbon neutrality in our sector well before mid-century. That could mean 2040 or perhaps even earlier. This is our ambition, and this is the one that we are pursuing in joint. So we believe that the Chinese ambition is one that that provides the basis for a very strong partnership with regard to understanding smart electrification strategies. And personally, I also have a strong innovation for China, as I went there as a student to study the wind energy sector back in the early 2000s. And I still remember the cordial friendship of Chinese experts that welcomed me there. I'd like to start by saying that I see this as a giant opportunity for China. China already has very strong value chains in wind and solar, and is building value chains in electric cars. So I think there's an enormous opportunity for jobs, for wealth, for sustainability and climate action in pursuing this effort. And I think it is worthwhile harvesting these opportunities. In Electric, we call the 2020s the electric decade, because we know that this decade will be decisive in making sure that we are actually able also to deliver later on in order to achieve the ambitious targets around mid-century. Therefore, the research agenda going forward should be really one that reflects this decade of doing. We need to make sure that what we do in terms of research is closely coordinated with the implementation efforts that we need to see on the ground, the build out of renewables, the strengthening of our grids, the electrification of end-use sectors. And with that in mind, I would outline a few key elements that we are exploring in Electric that might serve as inspiration. First of all, we're looking at accelerated electrification. We made a big study 5 years ago that is very much in line with the findings that we've seen here today in terms of ballpark figures on electrification, on the build out of renewables, the share of renewables in the system. Now, we also see that the technologies are changing, the economics are changing very fast in favor of accelerated action, of accelerated deployment of renewables, accelerated electrification. So we're currently assessing, could we speed up, and what is the best possible, let's say, trajectory and pace in light of the technological and economic developments. The second element I would say that defines our research agenda is market design. Now, we know that the system is changing, as we have been hearing today. It will be a more decentralized system in the future. And we believe that the market design of today may need to be amended to reflect this more decentralized reality. We also see a need for consistent long-term signals in order to ensure the investor certainty. And we see a need to consider remuneration, for instance, of seasonal storage, as was also mentioned. How do we make sure that there's a business case for people to sit on the energy for a long time when it's needed, for instance, in the deepest of winter? Another key area of our research agenda for the moment is resilience. even as we pursue these ambitious targets for climate action, we know that we are a bit late and that the weather systems around us may change. So we have to go into this electric future with resilience of our system in mind. We are seeing this now on the ground, big floodings, increased precipitation, forest fires, and we need to make sure that our system is future-proofed and ready for this new weather reality. We assessed last year that 8% of all investments in the 2020s in grids will need to go to resilience, to make our systems more robust in the light of the climate challenge. So this needs to be considered, and we need to think about the technologies, the reinforcements we need to make, the barrier systems to avoid floodings, for instance. And we need to probably take it even further and combine our deep knowledge about energy system dynamics with our increased knowledge about weather system dynamics. We believe, together with American partners, that there's a scope for a very interesting, let's say, a research agenda here that could make our choices more rational and more informed when it comes to how we build the system and how we get ready for extreme weather. And the last element I would mention is how this agenda meets the topic of biodiversity. Biodiversity loss is a major crisis for our civilization alongside climate change, and they're closely interrelated. The new technologies that we need to build a more renewable system require more space and will require us to put electricity capacity in places that it wasn't before. That raises the question of how it basically interacts with the ecosystems around it. And therefore, we call this research agenda power plant. The future power plant will be one that produces power and is also very well integrated in the plants and natural surroundings around it. How do we integrate these two elements? How do we create power plants that are well suited and for the natural surroundings, and potentially also are combined with other economic activities, for instance, agriculture? How can we, for instance, implement big PV parks on agricultural space while still harvesting agricultural products? How do we integrate this and make, let's say, a new sustainable economy that combines existing need for food production with the need for new renewable capacity? So these are a few pointers that we believe are important to pursue in the future research agenda. But as I said, it needs to be done in close coordination with the implementation efforts, because this is a decade of doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ruby. The points that you have shared with us are very interesting and also very important to us. Moving forward, I believe there's a tremendous amount of space for consensus, not only in the phase 2 cooperation with IRENA. We hope that in other areas, we can also strengthen our cooperation. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to invite my old friend, Carl, to take the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jiang Yiping. Great to be at this seminar, and I really want to congratulate both you at the State Grid Energy Research Institute and IRENA for this excellent report. I think it's extremely topical, and it's great because you actually combine these the technological approach, the information, the analysis about the energy technologies, the renewable energy, with scenario analysis and with system-wide analysis. I really think this is the way to do research today. And of course, a great presentation from Asami on pinpointing the conclusions from this report. So I really hope that that this report will be used a lot in the coming month and years. I also think actually it shows the value of the cooperation between State Grid Energy Research Institute and IRENA, but only partly, because I'm quite sure that the teams behind the report has gained a lot more than just making a report. We can read the report, but we actually cannot see what's all the lessons and all the fruitful dialogue between this. And I'm so grateful that you are determined to continue this. And it is important. Please really put that as a high priority. This. I will not go a lot into the. I think you really nailed with your conclusions in the report what is the case for a high share renewable energy and how to make sure that can be integrated. So let me turn to the next round. The suggestion from Li Jiang was actually also extremely well formulated, in the sense we have these 5 areas to develop and to look into as research topics. I think the challenge here is not the lack of topics to analyze. It's more how to do that in a 2-year program. So time is running fast, as we all know. When we are doing these kinds of analysis, suddenly we have to be finished. And also, what is very interesting at the moment, that the policy decisions are being done so rapidly currently in China. It's extremely encouraging to see the fast development in China, but it's also frustrating from a researcher's point of view, because we have to take the new situation into account very, very quickly. So my general suggestion for the next phase is that really try to build on what have you already achieved. Be very focused on which topic you want to dive into, and also prepare for the next phase, because I think this is an ongoing. I hope it's an ongoing research quest. This cooperation will continue. If I should point, as I mentioned, all the 5 areas mentioned by Li Jiang is very relevant. If I should point to 3 topics that from my point of view would be the most important to add or to think about, is I think the idea of having energy system scenarios. This is very important in my point of view for the research for several reasons. Clearly, if you want to look into what is the system-wide or the systemic impact of this energy transformation, you need to have scenarios, and you need to have very good scenarios also, especially for the power sector. And a lot of the issues raised regarding safety, regarding flexibility, regarding demand response, and so on, they need to be embedded in scenario analysis in order to really understand the challenges, but also the solutions in the future. And also, when you work with scenarios, it gives a very good disciplined way to work with the other technologies, because you actually need a lot of information to set up the scenarios, and so it's a way to structure the work. Secondly, I would echo Christian's point on power markets. I think, again, it's very encouraging what's happening in China. Alone in the recent month, a lot of things has really emerged as moving the power markets design and implementation in the right way. But there's a lot of issues that need to be addressed also from a research point of view. Christian pointed to this exactly, what which mechanisms will enable not only integration of renewable energy, but also really giving the power markets the right way to release the efficiency, the economy efficiency. And at the same time, the transformation process in the market setup is always important and creates a lot of challenges for the practical implementation of the power market. But power market as a tool for the power sector development, I think it's an important research area as well. And finally, there was a lot of mention about infrastructure, but I would actually point to the grids, to the smart grid planning. I think, again, I think worldwide there are a lot of consensus on the need for smart grid planning, but there's a lot of room and need for how to enhance this grid planning to take into account that the future energy system is based on, it's a high share, it has a renewable energy as the backbone of the energy system, but also it's a market-based system where you are not in full control on the generation, the capacity development, the consumer response and so on. So the smart grid planning, I think some of the elements in the European grid planning is very interesting, and the multi-criteria planning is definitely something to further develop also in the Chinese context. But again, I think there's a lot of room for research on how to have a smart grid development, taking into account also this cross-sector use of electricity. Well, that was very briefly on these, but again, I'm very encouraged by the report you have today, and I'm really happy that we will continue this.
Thank you. Thank you, Carl. I hope that we will continue to engage in exchanges in the future. Due to time constraint, we will now move on to our next panelist. And we have two Chinese experts. First of all, we would like to welcome Mr. Li from NCSC. Yes. The SGERI and IRENA have worked together to come up with this report about smart electrification. This is something that we really looked forward to, because in terms of realizing the carbon neutral goals, energy transition or a renewable energy-based energy transition has been a consensus among many people. However, how do we make sure that this can go smoothly? Well, I think our report provides some answers in terms of, for example, building, transportation, or industry. We talked about re-electrification, and I'm sure that this, although is an initial achievement, however, we can see this report as a great beginning. Maybe this report needs to be renewed on an annual basis, because we're sure that there will be a lot of different considerations throughout its implementation stage. And in the electrification process, we can probably find new technologies, new mechanisms, and at the same time, it is very likely that our electrification process will also impact our social or economic system, because we need to make sure that a change is necessary, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to adapt to this new electrification ecosystem. However, in terms of this report, how are we going to move forward? Well, I do agree that agree with what our two previous panelists have mentioned. And I'm also very appreciative of what Christian mentioned earlier. I think in terms of energy transition, or the transition of the electrification system, I think the solar and the wind energy systems, of course, play very crucial roles. IRENA or IEA have all published published two reports earlier last year, and they talked about the importance of solar and wind power. However, the problem with solar and wind power is that we need a lot of land. And I think Mr. Ruby said something that is really a very important concern. And I think when we want to develop solar and wind renewable energy, we really need to consider these two issues, for example, biodiversity. And during the process of combating climate change, biodiversity needs to be preserved, and we cannot look at this lightly. Another is food security. This is especially critical in China. And one is energy security, the other is food security. And food security, of course, is a very important pillar. So I think in the future, we do need to look into these topics. So in the future, these large-scale development plans, especially in terms of solar and wind power, we need to make sure that food security and biodiversity can also be preserved. And although they're not necessarily energy issues per se, however, they're very relevant to energy transition. So I agree very much with what Mr. Ruby said. And we do need to look into this because even in Europe, for example, for Germany, even for them, I know that they probably now already have a 50% renewable energy in their energy mix. How do they address these issues? I think these are something that we can look into. And because I said, we heard that a lot of the research process methodology is a review. And I think it's very helpful if we can look into past literature and also lessons learned by other countries, and they may provide very valuable lessons to the Chinese government. Secondly, in addition to technical mechanisms, I think it is also important to emphasize what Carl said earlier about the market, the power market. Well, we heard from Mr. Lee. He talked about security and also the economy. And within these two aspects, in addition to improving the technology, I think the other protection that is important is the mechanism. So if you don't have a protective mechanism, then things are difficult to be realized. So I think the power market can be protected with a mechanism. So I think we need to look into the power market because the EU, the United States, the United Kingdom, I know that they already have accumulated a lot of experiences. And if we can learn from these experiences, then it would be very, very helpful and accelerate our energy transition process. I think this report can also actually do more. We have this report here. We talk about smart electrification. I think this is a very important first step. We can translate that into Chinese. I think that's a very important first step. I know that the Energy Transition Forum would be held later this year. This is a very important year, and I hope that both parties can issue a joint report. So this report is not just something that is important for the power sector. I think it would also impact the government's various decisions and how the power sector can participate in this energy transition process. So I hope that these new findings or these results can be better distributed or disseminated among the policy decision makers. I think with more stakeholders involved, I think we would more smoothly promote energy transition and reach our goals. That is my intervention. And I hope that in the future, our research would be very, very helpful and contribute a lot to the energy transition process. I think this is a really epoch-making research project, and I think we need to continue with this research, and our both institutions can continue with our efforts and we can maybe even expand our efforts, and everybody can take part, because this is crucial to solve this very critical issue in the history of human development. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee mentioned that we should really promote the results of our research. This first version is an English report, and we will translate this report into a Chinese version, and hopefully our colleagues in China will also benefit from this report. Now we would like to welcome Professor Kang from Tsinghua University. And I know that you have already conducted a lot of research in energy transition, so your insights are very valuable. Thank you. First of all, I'm very happy to be able to take part in this forum, and I was listening to everybody and I was greatly inspired. I would like to talk about two things. First is about the research per se, although we don't have a lot of lead time, but I think this is actually a very comprehensive report. We started from smart electrification, then we talked about the three changes. And I was looking at Asami and Asami-san and also Gillen. They talked about electrification and decentralization and digitization. I think these three changes can actually improve the flexibility of our our power system and reach energy transition goals. I think these also provide very good analyses for many sectors, for example, building and transportation and industry. We also saw in the report that there were some comparisons with international experiences, because IRENA has a global membership. So I think the report itself is a great reference. And I think this would be very, very beneficial to energy transition processes and roadmaps for many countries around the world. This is a general comment on the report. My second point is with regards to our expectations or our goals for our next phase of research. And Mr. Lee talked about his views. And I think this new direction is very relevant to smart electrification. And also, he talked about some very good suggestions. I really commend what Mr. Lee has said. And I think there are five. I also heard that there are 5 major steps or 5 major areas, and I agree. I have 3 suggestions. First, in terms of the demand side, I think we really need to have a very good understanding of the demand side, because if you look at the development of the power sector, I think the supply and demand issues are always very interconnected. So I think in this report, we have already seen some suggestions to sectors such as transportation and building. And there was a lot of potential analyses, and this is more quantitative, or it lays out a lot of the potentials, but I think we can add in digitization. So I'm sorry, there was a lot of qualitative analyses, but we can also add in more quantifiable or quantitative analyses, because how can we put into numbers these potentials? I think this quantification is very important. In addition to the total number, I think we can also look at their characteristics, because in terms of the development of the supply side, they probably have very distinctive characteristics. That means we have to look at, for example, power or heating or cooling. You know, they probably have different demands, and maybe the consumer behaviors would be very different. One of my students' dissertation topic is on the demand side of electrification, and I think this is very critical. And of course, the demand side can be very, very diversified. We also talked about decentralization, and I think that is relevant to demand side analysis. The second part is about the supply side. Of course, we need to increase the percentage of renewables, so developing new energies are very important. We heard already previous experts talk about the issues that are relevant to developing new energies, for example, the land issue or biodiversity issues. And new energies can probably have different usages. For example, you see PV, solar PV and wind, they're less controllable. But then, for example, there are other kinds of new energies that are probably more easier to control. And I think these kind of new energies would be very critical in establishing a more balanced power system. So I think we need to look at the supply side as well. Thirdly, is from a systematic point of view. So we talked about digitization, decentralization, and also electrification. But I think it's we can take this or approach this from a systematic point of view or systemic point of view. We've already heard experts talk about the market in China. Last November, President Xi Jinping looked at the global, the nationwide power infrastructure issues, and he also talked about the issue of balance. So we need to make sure that we lower uncertainties and increase flexibility and agility. So in terms of mechanism and control methods, these are all systematic approaches. So these are my 3 suggestions. Lastly, in Tsinghua University, we are a research institute, and so we will be very, very delighted if we can also take part in this project, and whether we can participate in forums or we can also join in the research efforts. Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Kang, for expressing your willingness to join our research efforts. And I know that we also actually already have a reference, because your student's dissertation might be very, very helpful to us talking about the demand analyses. Due to time constraint, we really are not able to really expound on a lot of the points that have been raised. But I'm going to give our 4 panelists an invitation. I'm going to ask you to all take part in our research efforts in the future. And so in summary, I think there are 3 reflections. First of all, our experts really approve of our research methodology, which is a literature review methodology. Secondly, I noticed that during this research process, sometimes we would engage in expert discussions, and we would look into these different analyses. And I think, or should I say, I hope that we can create some kind of platform or a communication platform between foreign and Chinese experts. This would help us reach good consensus or a lot of consensus or further our collaborative efforts. Thirdly, we have very ambitious goals, and you also all mentioned very critical issues. So I think probably our next step, we have to look into these various issues. When I was listening to Mr. Lee's report, I thought that we probably have put on a very heavy burden, or should I say undertook a very, very huge mission. So maybe we should kind of like optimize our efforts so that we can be more focused. I think our collaboration with IRENA and also all other experts, I hope this is a continuous effort, not just next year or the year after that. Well, thank you very much for your participation, and thank you very much for your expertise and insights. I would also like to thank other participants for your time. And if you do have any other comments, please provide us with your feedback.
Jiang, and for the wonderful moderation, and as well as Yeah, as well as other experts' views and the key topics. I think it's a number of things. It's a very interesting topic. I will say this is based on my knowledge about the China and about the IRENA. I think a number of things, and especially in the power market and the power market, how actually what the role is going to play, and so there's need to be a balance actually. And as well as the planning is a very important scenario, as the car mentioned, extremely critical. And for China, there's a large system. There's many ways actually you can analysis from different levels scenarios, but also there's a new approach because we're addressing some unprecedented challenges and the problems that we've never seen before. So those are the lot of new topics we can discuss. So we're very happy to see the discussion through the experts and has been broadened and to a larger and context, as well as actually can see there's some in-depth discussion and some ideas, some new thinking, some new very thoughtful advice. This is very helpful. And without ado, this will hand over to Dolph Gilling, and the director of IRENA's Innovation Technology Center, to give a final closing remarks. And the Dolph, floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Young. First of all, many thanks to Jiang Liping and the experts, which I think was valuable additional input. I hope that this session has provided the audience a sense of what is going on in terms of cooperation between State Grid and IRENA. And this new report, I encourage you to have a close look, and we very much welcome your feedback on that. We also give you a sense of how we intend to continue and to expand this cooperation in the coming 2 years to address the key challenges that China and in fact the whole world is facing in the energy transformation process. The joint analytical work in the new report underlines the importance of smart electrification to achieve the desired results. So electrification is key, but we need to make sure also that it's a smart electrification so that it can help in the grid operation, while we also increase the share of variable renewables. It was also repeatedly mentioned that scenarios play a key role in this, and State Grid is also one of the partners in our long-term energy scenarios network. There are also a number of good ideas that came on in terms of future cooperation. And there was also willingness expressed by the experts to broaden this and to make this a wider cooperation going forward. So thank you very much for these inputs and for this willingness to engage. And we will together continue to fine-tune this cooperation agenda going forward. So that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dolph, for the very to the point conclusion of this webinar. And I also hope everyone who is participants and enjoy this webinar can have a lot of takeaways. And once again, on behalf of the IRENA and also State Grid and the two co-hosts, and thank all the participants and also experts and to join in this webinar and to share your views and insights around those very important topics and we need to address in order for us to advance global energy transition. With that, and I will close this webinar, and thank you very much again.
谢谢，
谢谢，
辛苦了，陈勇。
谢谢，拜拜。
Thank you very much.
拜
Thank you.
拜，谢谢。
Thank you, Mr. Ruby. 关了 ，OK